So, another huge news story in AI this past week, Anthropic, the maker of the popular Claude AI assistant, announced that Amazon is investing up to $4 billion in the company. And Anthropic says this will make, quote, safe and steerable AI widely accessible to AWS customers. AWS will also become Anthropic's primary cloud provider for mission critical workflows. And importantly, that gives Anthropic access to Amazon chips to be developing further AI models. It will also open up access to Claude 2 to many more organizations who are already building on AWS and want to access state of the art models in safe and secure ways. What's cool about this announcement also is that Anthropic cited how some major companies are already building with Anthropic models via Amazon. For instance, LexisNexis Legal and Professional is using a custom version of Claude 2 to summarize and draft legal content. The famous investing firm Bridgewater Associates is using Claude 2 to generate charts and summarize data. And the travel company Lonely Planet is using Claude 2 to drop the cost of generating their travel itineraries by up to 80% using all the decades of travel content they have available. So, first up, what does this mean for Anthropic and its competitive position in the AI landscape?
So this stuff is really hard to keep track of, but my first reaction when I saw this is, wait a second, didn't Google just put a bunch of money into Anthropic? Like, so if you think about, if we go back to the technology infrastructure at play here, we have the infrastructure companies like NVIDIA that makes the chips, and then you have Google with their cloud, you have AWS from Amazon, and you have Microsoft Azure. Those are the cloud companies where all the data lives, where these models can, connect to the data and do things. Then you have the companies building the models like Anthropic and Inflection and Cohere and all these players. And then you have the application layer companies, the software companies building on top of them. So what we're seeing is the cloud companies, Google, Microsoft, and Amazon, are doing deals with the language model companies like Anthropic deal here. So AWS and Anthropic. But so I go back and check my notes and it's like, oh yeah, totally. So in February, there was a report that the Financial Times said in late 2022, Google invested around 300 million in Anthropic. In return, Google got a 10% stake in the company. Separately, Anthropic announced that week in February that Google Cloud is its preferred cloud provider, and the companies will co-develop AI computing systems. So just what is that? 7 months ago, Anthropic raises 300 million from Google and basically says they're our partners. Like we're going to work with Google. And now we have up to 4 billion from Amazon 7 months later. So the word is it was like 1.3 billion up front, maybe in processing power, maybe in money, I don't know. And then up to 4 billion based on whatever the terms of the agreement are. So what it shows is like the competition is insane right now for these language model companies. So we have Microsoft that we know put like 10 billion into OpenAI for access to GPT-4. But just what we talked about previously, they're doing deals with Meta now, who has Llama 2, the biggest open source model, and they were the lead investor in Inflection. Um, so that was earlier this year. Then you have Google, who's invested in Anthropic and Cohere that we know of, and probably others. And then you have Amazon that did their deal with Anthropic, but they also put money into Cohere and they're doing deals with Meta and they have Stability AI. Now, it is like mind boggling, like how the space is playing out right now. And then keep in mind, like Dario Amodei, who's the co founder of Anthropic, was the vice president of research at OpenAI. And prior to that, he was a research leader at Google. So I know a few episodes that we talk about how all these people are connected. They all work together at different times. They all came from like the same company trees. Um, yeah, that was, I mean, it's a huge deal what they're doing. We had a whole episode where we talked about Dario and the interview he did about what Anthropic's building. So if that would be a good one to go back and listen to get more context around Anthropic. But they are a major player. They're investing obviously billions in building their next generation models, which will be multimodal. Dario, the founder of Anthropic, was the guy who I think led the development of GPT-1 and GPT-2 at OpenAI. So Yeah, I mean, if you weren't paying attention to Anthropic Claude before, now would be a good time to start.
Okay.
And they're the one, again, if you're not familiar, they have the largest context window at the moment. So what that means is if you want to do a prompt in Claude, you can give it up to like 75,000 words as part of the prompt. So you could give it a whole novel. You could give it the last 100 like customer service transcripts. You could give it, 1,000 sample emails. Like you could give it all this stuff as like training data, basically, to drive the output. So major player, crazy the amount of money that's getting thrown around to these language model companies. You got to think at some point somebody buys someone. Like
Mm.
I, I, I mean, I assume that in all these deals there is some sort of like right of first refusal on acquiring the companies. I don't know. Like it's wild.
So, what does this mean for me if I'm an AWS customer today?
I think they said that it's actually like widely available already that if your data lives in AWS, you can now start training Claude models on your data safely, securely, already through procurement. Like it's already there.
Hmm.
So I think that's the biggest implication is Claude 2 is now baked right into your AWS account, and you're able to start using your data that's already living there to build things with Claude.
So, obviously, as we know, in some of the work we do, enterprise adoption and development of this stuff is complicated. But at a general level, if you are an enterprise trying to build your own model or customize one and you're an AWS customer, you probably need to be looking into one of the models they offer.
Having your CIO, like your data team. Yeah. This is one where, like, if you're a marketer listening to this, you're probably going to need some help. Like, you're not probably going into AWS and starting to build your own models, but you're bringing business cases for ideas to build, some pilot models, things like that. So, knowing it's possible and being able to go have a conversation with the people in your company you need to talk to start testing it out is really the key there.
So, if I'm not an AWS customer, what kind of lessons or takeaways should I be thinking about in light of this development?
Well, if you're a Google or Microsoft, you have similar capabilities with other language models. Like this is the future. So again, the cloud companies, there's three major players. If your data lives in those, all three of them are trying to build the ability for you to develop language models in your company based on these other foundation models. So maybe you're building with Anthropic, maybe you're building with Cohere, maybe it's Meta's Llama 2, maybe it's Stability AI. Um, Maybe it's OpenAI, GPT-4, whatever. These are the models that you're going to build on. So your data's got to live in a cloud, and then you use one of these models to basically train custom versions for your company. Maybe there's a customer service version and a marketing version and a sales version and a HR version. Like that's the assumption we're under is you're probably going to have a collection of these models in your company that are tuned specifically for different applications or different business functions. And maybe you're an AWS customer and one of them is built on Cohere because Cohere is best at marketing. And maybe another one is built on Anthropic because it's best at handling HR and legal. Like that's the unknown right now. And that's why consultants who can help solve these strategies are going to make a lot of money in the coming years.